This is a bit of a sad one. I'm applying for a foreign passport, and you should too, for the rise of the Islamo-Nazis. I have started the process of applying for an Argentinian passport. If you live in Europe and have any familial connection, if you're lucky enough to have such a thing, to a far-flung land, you should consider this too. Not to leave a sinking ship. I intend to stay and fight, by which I mean try to convince minds. But as an insurance policy, I've sat through history classes, as have many of you, wondering why on earth the Jews didn't leave sooner. Never again. Not this time. This week, Muslim extremists in Amsterdam went on a literal hunt for Jews.
Free Palestine now! Free Palestine!
Say free Palestine and we go!
Since I first wrote this, the same thing happened the following night, and the same thing happened in Sweden. Free Palestine activists started attacking Jews who were gathering to remember Krystallnacht. On the evening's programme in Holland were attempted stabbings, head stamping and hunting down Jews in cars. The footage seared in my memory is that of a cowering victim denying he is a Jew in the vain hope of being left alone. Every time something like this happens, the reaction is duller and less sympathetic. Nothing is free from the Islamo-woke ideology. Free Palestine lunatics have even been ruining armistice remembrance services across the country. That is the poppy remembrance that we had on the 11th of November for the heroes who fought for freedom in our world wars. Now, Israel's football team plays in France next week, one of Israel's football teams, and progressives are already making plans to reenact the Jew hunts in Paris. They're recruiting Moroccan Muslims for the job. Now, we've been here before, in Holland no less, where Nazis snatched Anne Frank from an attic before her death in a concentration camp 80 years ago. It's still a living memory. Just. But let me spell this out. After years of woke gaslighting whereby progressives and academics labelled anyone to the right of Karl Marx a literal Nazi, the actual far-right fundamentalists they inexplicably welcomed to our shores in enormous numbers are reviving Jew hate once more in the form of Islamo-Nazism. This is why I'm applying for a passport. I don't intend to leave Britain, but if things get much more serious, my family and I won't have a choice. If it does happen and I move back to Argentina, I hope to live under the reign of anti-woke superstar President Javier Milei. You should think about this too. Just as Hitler didn't intend to stop with the Jews, once we are out of the way, you're next. The thing we all said would happen is happening. If you import millions, yes, literally millions, of people each year who hold an ideology that calls for the death of Jews, what do we expect? The scariest part of this isn't necessarily the hunt, but the reaction by the mainstream media and most ex-users. This shouldn't surprise you. After the October 7th attacks, the most violent and shocking terrorist attack in modern history, and there have been a fair few, the Islamo-woke did the same. They blamed the victims and went on marches to celebrate the and murders by Hamas, a terrorist cell no different than ISIS. Jihad and intifada, the UK police helpfully explained, just means struggle, just as Hitler's Mein Kampf means my struggle. This time in Amsterdam, they told us that the Jews, often literally the Jews, as opposed to Israelis, brought it upon themselves. This is because Israeli football fans were visiting Amsterdam for a football match. As is customary of football fans, they were possibly drunk, boorish and provocative. It is alleged they took down a Palestinian flag and sang disrespectful and disgraceful chants about the deaths of Palestinian children. This is abhorrent behaviour and should be called out. The problem, however, is that the Islamo-woke are suggesting this caused and merited the indiscriminate attacks on Jews in Amsterdam. The reality is that Islamists had already planned the attacks, but even if the behaviour of the Israeli football fans was the sole incendiary motivator, it is no defence for physical beatings of Jews who had nothing to do with the game, or those who did have something to do with the game and were just saying horrible things. We must stop equating horrible, horrible words, no matter how horrible they are, with violence. This victim of the attack tried to convince his attackers he wasn't Jewish. This is the new Nazism sweeping through Europe at rapid pace. The mad defence and rationalisation of mindless violence calls to mind actor Liam Neeson's bizarre story about taking to the streets to beat up whatever black man he could find after someone from that race attacked his friend. The same rationality cropped up in defence of the Amsterdam Jew hunters concerning, you guessed it, Israel. The logic goes, since we disagree with Israel's government, any Jew is fair game. Is it acceptable then for white people to indiscriminately hunt Muslims because of 9/11 or because of the countless horrors that take place in the Muslim world? Just today, Iraq lowered its age of consent for girls to 9 years old. Who is that for? I'd also remind the reader that Israel is responsible for an infinitesimally small percentage of Muslim deaths from war. Other Muslims kill the vast majority of their people. That's pertinent today because new videos have emerged showing what we all know. Hamas tortures its own people. It is integral to Western liberal values that we never attribute blame for the actions of specific individuals to those with whom they share immutable features. This is why it would be absurd to blame Arabs for the countless atrocities carried out by other Arabs. I shouldn't have to say that, but that's where we are right now. The BBC has described this modern pogrom as clashes. They can't face up to what this is because they, and the celebrity class, have caused this with their bleeding heart calls, or at times blue-haired screams, for more immigration. But the celebs, Jews like turkeys voting for Christmas are sadly among them, are not the ones who have to live with what they imported. At least, not yet. It's about to get much worse. The numbers are just way too large. In my initial article about this on Substack, andrewgoldheretics.com, I shared many of the different tweets, abusive tweets from X that were thrown at me and explained a little bit about each type. I can't do that on YouTube because you can't put that kind of offensive material out. But I ask you this. Had a minority whose tweet reached 1 million accounts, as mine did, and received such abhorrent racist abuse, which you can find on that website, how might the media react? Would the bleeding hearts not be out in droves to condemn the West as a racist backwards whole? Imagine if black footballer Marcus Rashford had gotten such a response, even though in his case, the Alan Turing Institute found that the white footballers received significantly more online abuse. You see, this doesn't make me think the West is racist, the kinds of abuse that I've gotten. I think, in fact, that it is by some distance the least racist of any society in history. I've always felt this, and you'll find it a common theme in my writing and my words. We are always looking for Nazis, which is exactly why the next time it happens, it won't be another Western superpower drunk on its own racism. It'll be the non-Western ideologues that the West's anti-racists import en masse. The Jews are the litmus test, but the rest of you won't be far behind. Apply for your passport, if you can, now. If you agree with this sentiment, hit that like button, keep watching this channel and find the full article with all the examples of the abuse I was getting on Andrew Gold Heretics.